Jenna started crying when she finally heard her newborn daughter crying. Giving birth to her baby had taken its toll. She was exhausted and could barely believe it was finally over. Giving birth is not the easiest task in the world, and having to endure hours of labor, that sound your baby makes means the world. The nurse placed the baby girl on Jenna's chest. Finally, she could hold her baby in her arms. Jenna looked around the room. "Where is Jason?" she said. Her husband Jason seemed to have disappeared. Then Jason entered the room. His face looked pale and Jenna knew immediately something was wrong. He walks up to Jenna, holds her hand, and says, "I'm sorry." Startled with what her husband had to say, she wanted to know more. She needed to know more. "Jason, what do you mean? What are you sorry for?" Jenna said. But before she realized what was happening, Jason dropped her hand and ran out of the room, leaving Jenna and her newborn baby girl alone. Jenna started crying. "What is happening? Why is he leaving me?" Dazed and confused after giving birth, she didn't have the energy to process it all. There she was, in a hospital with her baby girl in her arms. Her husband had just left her and she had no idea what was happening. She felt every emotion she knew raging through her head. At the same time, she was happy, angry, relieved, and confused. But most of all, she felt very sad that she was on her own now. Imagine being left alone without an explanation. Then a familiar face entered the room. It was this moment that could finally give her the answers she needed. The worst part about giving birth is going through the experience alone and having your emotions run wild. With so much happening, uncertainty and doubt won't help your cause, which was exactly what happened to Jenna. The familiar face was her mother. She had just arrived at the hospital to support and congratulate Jenna, but on her way upstairs she had come across Jason. She talked to him and now she went to Jenna to explain everything. She held Jenna's hand and said, "Honey, there is something you need to know about Jason." With the initial shock of it all, Jenna just wanted her mom to tell her, and to tell her now. She needed answers, and how Jason left without a word is not something she expected to happen after giving birth to their child. Who would have thought Jason would do such, and why? If you knew Jason, you might understand his strange behavior. It's something that goes way back, and it will further explain his actions and as to why he reacted in such a manner after his child was born. Jason did not have any siblings, but this wasn't always the case. Jason had a sibling that he was so close to growing up and they were inseparable. Their bond was held closer due to the fact that they were twins, which made it unclear as to why there wasn't much information about her. It makes you wonder what could she have done that took her out of the picture. When he was young, Jason grew up together with his twin sister, Grace. They loved each other a lot and were inseparable. Jason and Grace loved building tree houses and going to the beach with their parents. It did not matter where Jason went, Grace was never far away. With such a bond, it would have been weird as to why she is only being mentioned now. Jason and Grace had big plans together. They felt like they could take on the world when they were together. It was a bond that couldn't easily be broken. It's as if issues and challenges that come their way could be resolved as long as they did it together. By the time they were 13 years old, they made a promise to each other that they would travel to at least 30 countries across the world before they were 30 years old. A few years later, Jason and Grace were 15 years old and still full of energy. However, it was weird that Jason was very energetic while Grace often was very tired. Also, she quite often missed school because she had such severe headaches. They had no idea what was happening to her, so they went to the doctor. Needless to say, it was not looking good for Grace, and she had to be checked to further understand what was going on. Grace explained to the doctor that she often had severe headaches and that she was very tired. And she barely did anything to burn that much energy. But the doctor said that it could be because she is a young woman and her body is going through a lot of changes. Maybe it was puberty, or she was just going through the cycle of life. But then she said she also started to get problems with her memory. She could barely retain current events, and she had difficulty recalling past events too. The doctors took the initiative and ordered a CT scan to get a closer look and maybe find the root cause of the symptoms she was going through. This changed his assumption immediately and made him think about a lot of possible diagnosis. The doctor thought it was quite strange for a young girl like Grace to have such problems with her memory. So he decided to run some tests. And before Grace fully realized what was going on, she got a scan of her head. Meanwhile, Jason was of course there to support her. CT scans at a young age is terrifying. You never know what's happening unless their results are released or the scans are interpreted. Grace wanted to get rid of the pain and went with it anyway despite the fears she had. The doctors were about to find out what was going on, since this was the chance to take a closer look and it could surely give them answers. Grace was very nervous. She had a bad feeling about this. Jason also felt the same, as if they both knew something was wrong. After waiting for an hour, the doctor returned to Grace and Jason with the results. He said, "Please, sit down. I have some bad news for you." With a heavy heart, the doctor had to deliver the results, and Grace alongside Jason were mustering the courage to listen to what he had to say. They needed answers, and even if it was going to be bad news, they knew it was something they needed to know to understand what was happening. If they did not resolve this issue now, they would never have resolved it at all. The doctor continued, "Grace, it seems like you have a big brain tumor. We will run additional tests to see what we can do to heal you, but I don't want to give you false hope. Things are not looking good." Jason was heartbroken. How could he ever live without his twin sister? This can't be real. Neither Grace nor Jason could comprehend what was happening at the moment. But unfortunately, this was very real. No one could deny the fact of what the scans have shown. Soon they discovered that Grace would only have a few months left to live. Jason and Grace were heartbroken. The inseparable twins would be separated after all. So one day when Grace and Jason went to their old treehouse, Jason made Grace two promises. The first promise he made was that he would still try to visit 30 countries before he was 30 years old, like they were planning to do when they were young. The continuity of what they planned as kids was something that needed to live on even without her. And Grace loved this idea. But when he told his second promise, Grace started crying heavily. Jason held her hand and said, "Dear Grace, if one day I am lucky enough to have a daughter, I will name her after you." Grace cried and hugged Jason. This was the sweetest thing someone could ever do. And remember, he was only 15 when he promised this. It's as if her world crumbled and was brought back to life with a simple promise, and it meant the world to her. Grace knew that Jason would keep his word because she knew her brother was not the type of guy that would make promises and break them. After that hug, and the sweet moment they shared, the inevitable finally happened. A few months later, Grace passed away. The funeral was bittersweet. Grace was no longer enduring the hardship of battling cancer, but bitter since it was a loss of a beautiful, kind-hearted person. A lot of beautiful memories were recalled and everybody smiled when all the lovely stories Grace had experienced were told by Jason. But it was also very sad. Jason was on his own now. He will surely miss his lovely sister. Right after the funeral and when Jason finally accepted what happened, he continued on to pursue the promise he made to Grace. He wanted to allow her to see him from heaven doing what he said he would after her passing. It may not seem like something people would do for their siblings, but Jason was different. He loved his sister so much and building and fulfilling this promise was everything to him. He always thought he would start traveling when he was older, or at the age he promised Grace, but he decided to go to Canada for Christmas. It was his first country out of 30 that he was planning on visiting over the next 15 years. It was a small step, but a step towards the right direction nonetheless. But he could have never guessed what he would encounter when he arrived in Canada. Jason had planned to stay in a bed and breakfast in a small town in Canada. Since he wasn't planning on staying there for long, it was like a stopover that he had to make as he will continue on to different countries after. It would be his first Christmas ever without his parents. He was very nervous, but he was eager to meet new people and see more of the country. But he'd never imagined what he would find in Canada. On the third day of his trip, he went to a Christmas fair in town. So far he was a bit disappointed. With the travel he made, he expected so much more. He had not seen that much yet and he had not met many new people. He felt lonely and missed his parents a lot. He was walking around feeling sad, but everything changed when he looked up and saw who was in front of him. Suddenly a girl stood in front of him. Even if he hasn't met that many people, she made everything feel different. He noticed immediately how pretty she was. She had beautiful dark long hair and eyes that he could drown in. Jason was flabbergasted and started blushing. Then she approached him and said, "Hi, I'm Jenna, nice to meet you." Jason could not believe what was happening. How could he meet someone like her in the first country that he visited? Did this beautiful girl really just walk up to him to introduce herself? This could become a very nice holiday after all. And before Jason could reply to Jenna, she asked him to join her and her friends. He stuttered a bit while he accepted her invitation. Jenna giggled. It was amazing. Suddenly he met a group of very nice kids his age. He told them his story and they were all very touched. Over the next few days, Jenna and her friends took Jason to all the best places in town. They enjoyed their time together as if they had been friends their whole life. But then the day came when Jason had to return home. Jenna joined him at the airport. This is technically a beautiful yet heart-wrenching scene for anyone, especially Jason who has gone through a loss. While Jason was waiting on his plane, he and Jenna moved a bit closer to each other. And when it was finally time to say goodbye, it finally happened. Jason and Jenna kissed for the first time. But now he had to go. Would they see each other again? Jason kept in contact with Jenna. They wrote each other romantic letters and promised they would soon see each other again. It was like a scene from a beautiful movie or book that made everything seem like it was going to work out. But unfortunately, they both seemed to move on with their lives, and soon they stopped sending letters to each other. Fast forward 3 years, and we see Jason going to college. It was a typical life for Jason after meeting an amazing woman. He was excited about this new change in his life. He has gone through so much and the peace and serenity made it easier for him. He went to a different city and everything was new to him. But when he walked into his first class, he could not believe his eyes. When he walked into that classroom, he saw Jenna sitting there. He started blushing, just like the first time when he met her. When Jenna saw that she started giggling, Jason quickly moved over to sit next to Jenna. They had a lot to tell each other. It was a surprise neither of them planned, and it was as if destiny and faith had something to do with it. It was as if they were 15 again. They had a second chance. They had fun together, and started meeting each other whenever they had some time off. It was something they were finally capable of doing without the limit of distance to keep them apart. It seemed like even though they had not been in contact for a few years now, they still had a lot of feelings for each other. After hanging out for a while, they became an official couple. They just knew it was meant to be. And after college, Jason proposed to Jenna. It was expected since they spent so much time together. They bonded and built a level of connection that would end up as a fairy tale ending. And of course, she said yes. They bought a house and moved in there, and they started to plan their wedding. The wedding was amazing. Jenna's family and friends from Canada flew to the USA to be at the wedding, and everybody had the most amazing time. They were bonding, celebrating, and enjoying every minute of it. But Jenna had a secret that she had not told Jason yet, and she knew she should have told Jason before they married, but she was scared. But still, she had to tell him. So after their honeymoon, Jenna took Jason's hand and said, "Honey, there is something you should know." They needed to start their new chapter with a clean slate to fully embrace married life. They needed to trust each other well enough, and that meant no secrets, including their dark past, should there be any. Jason had been talking about his wish to get a lot of children more and more often. Since he made a promise to Grace to name his first daughter after her. And it hurt Jenna because she had been in an accident when she was younger, and the doctors had told her that the chances of her getting pregnant were very slim. But how would Jason react to this news? Jenna and Jason sat in the living room. Jason knew something was wrong and saw that Jenna almost started crying, without even saying anything yet. Then she cleared her throat and started talking. "Jason, please don't be angry with me, I know I should have told you earlier. But there is something about me you need to know." She wanted to let him know rather than keep it in forever. Jenna told Jason her story. Jason started crying and hugged Jenna. He said, "It's okay, honey, I'll be here for you." Luckily, he was not angry, but she also noticed he was very sad. How would this work in their relationship? Would they find a way to make this work? Fast forward 4 years later. After trying every option, they gave up on trying to get children. It was as if it was never going to happen and they just needed to accept it. Jason and Jenna finally found the peace that it was just not meant to be for them. Even though it was very hard, they decided to move on and focus on living happily together. Until one day Jenna woke up nauseous. Jenna had a very strange feeling that she might be pregnant after all. They had just thrown out all tests since they stopped trying, so she had to go to the store to buy a new test. Later that evening when Jason arrived, she stood in the hallway waiting for him. He entered the house and she ran towards him to hug him. What was going on? Jason, I'm pregnant, Jenna said. A lot of thought raged through Jason's head. How could this happen so suddenly, just when they decided they would stop trying? Of course, he was very happy, but he was also very concerned. Would the pregnancy go well? With the issues they have experienced, getting pregnant is not going to be an easy road ahead. Jenna had regular checks by a doctor to see if the baby was healthy. And halfway through their pregnancy, it seemed like everything was going very well. But for some reason, Jason seemed to behave a bit odd lately. He often looked very sad. Jenna could not figure out why. It's as if there was something unsettling that Jenna didn't know about. One day Jenna finally decided to ask Jason what was going on in his head. Why was he so sad while he should be happy about becoming a father? Then he explained. It's Grace, I keep thinking about her. The closer I get to becoming a father, I start to miss her more. The promise he made, and what he told Grace, it was overwhelming to think about. It seemed like a logical reason to be sad. He had lost a very important person in his life after all. And remembering her would surely make him feel this way. Jenna thought it was actually very sweet of Jason to be so concerned over their baby. He wanted to do anything he could to protect the baby. But soon he would find out his feelings had a big impact. The big day had arrived. Jenna's water broke and she had to go to the hospital. Jason was at work when it happened, so he had to rush home to grab all the stuff they needed and went to the hospital with Jenna. And while they were prepared for a lot, they were definitely not prepared for what was about to happen. Both Jenna and Jason had mixed feelings about the experience that they both couldn't comprehend. Going into labor was very tough on Jenna. She had a lot of pain and it took very long. Since she never expected it, it was a whole new experience. After 18 hours it finally happened. Their baby was born. Jenna was exhausted and with so many things going on she had no idea what was happening to Jason. Then when everything finally calmed down, she noticed he was not there anymore. What was going on? Why would he do such a thing? Then her mother entered the room. Jenna immediately asked, "Have you seen Jason? What is wrong with him?" Then her mother started laughing. Jenna was still dazed and confused, yet the sight of her mother laughing was not easing the moment and neither was it giving her the answer she needed. Jenna's mother started explaining what had just happened. When their baby was finally born, Jason was in shock. The moment caught him by surprise and his emotions went all over the place. They did not know beforehand what gender their kid would be, and they had a feeling that it would be a boy. But then he finally saw the baby and noticed it was a girl. Jason was shocked when he saw he had a baby girl. He immediately thought about Grace and the promise he made to her. And since this was such an intense moment, Jason fainted. While Jason fainted, a doctor carried him to another room where it was more quiet, so he could recover quickly. Meanwhile, Jenna had no idea Jason had fainted. She was focused on giving birth and the doctors who helped her. Then when the baby was placed on her chest, she finally noticed Jason was gone. Then Jason entered the room. He was pale and felt dizzy. He felt bad that he wasn't there when they could finally hold their daughter together. He held Jenna's hand and said, I'm sorry." Then he quickly ran away. He was so dizzy he knew he had to throw up. But Jenna still had no idea what happened. Then her mother came into the room to explain everything. Jenna started laughing. It sounded like such a stupid story, but she also thought it was actually very cute. At the end of the day, fainting was not the answer she wanted and needed at the time. She wanted to be with Jason since it was a momentous occasion that should be shared with her husband. Luckily, it did not take too long for him to return to the room, so they could finally be together. A family of 3. Then Jenna said to Jason, "Honey, meet Grace, your daughter." Jason started crying and so did Jenna. They were both so happy. It was a miracle that they did not expect but were surely happy that it happened. A whole new chapter for the couple.